You're not crumbling because the world is cruel. You're not fading because someone attacked you. You're being dismantled, quietly, deliberately, by the choices you make in the shadows. The nod you gave when your gut screamed no. The smile you plastered on when rage burned inside. The whispered yes when your soul was clawing to escape. You call it maturity, diplomacy, keeping the peace. But let's call it what it is: surrender. Not to a tyrant, not to a blade, but to 1,000 moments where you chose to shrink. You're leaking power, not because it was stolen, but because you stopped guarding it. The world noticed. They stopped asking your opinion, stopped checking in, stopped weighing their words around you. Not out of malice, but because you taught them they don't need to. You'll show up anyway. You'll nod. You'll agree. You'll stay. And they love it. It's easy. You're easy. But Machiavelli saw through this centuries ago. Everyone sees what you appear to be, but few understand what you are. When people think they've figured you out, they stop fearing the cost of crossing you. The predictable man is exploitable. The one who's always explaining, always softening, always available. He becomes background noise in a world that only hears thunder. This isn't about kindness, it's about strategy. You don't need more patience, you need presence. Not arrogance, but clarity. Machiavelli didn't write for the well-behaved. He wrote for survivors who refuse to erase themselves. So ask yourself, are you still begging to be loved, included, safe? Or are you ready to reclaim the version of you that knew how to leave a room and let the silence roar? If something stirs inside you, not hope, but that buried rage you've long ignored, lean into it. Let it burn. If you're done playing a game you never signed up for, drop this in the comments. I no longer ask permission to be respected. Subscribe not to follow, but to mark this moment. The moment you stop being a diluted shadow and start walking the path Machiavelli laid for those who choose to be remembered, not liked. Let's begin. Part 1. The quiet deactivation. Why you're fading without a fight. They're not shouting, they're not attacking, but make no mistake, you're being erased. Not with fists or betrayal, but with something colder: indifference. It's subtle at first. You're still in the room, still invited, still heard. Technically. But something's off. They talk over you. They move on without your input. Your words land like whispers, met with polite nods, then forgotten. You're included, but not felt. So what do? You smile. You nod. You call it maturity. But is it? Or is it the start of your quiet cancellation, where you're not exiled? You're just no longer necessary. Machiavelli would have smirked. He knew what most forget. Respect isn't given to those who accommodate. It's earned by those who disturb. You think tolerance is noble, but unchecked, it's not a virtue, it's a losing strategy. When was the last time someone paused before speaking to you, thinking, if I say this, he might walk away? If it's been too long, you're too available, too safe. The predictable man doesn't command a room, he blends into it. People don't ignore you because you're unimportant. They ignore you because you've trained them to. You bend, you adjust, you smile through disrespect. You stay no matter what. And when you're that easy to read, you're easy to dismiss. Machiavelli said it's safer to be feared than loved. Not intimidation, presence. Presence creates pause. Pause creates power. Right now you're creating comfort, not pause. No one hesitates before crossing your space because they know you won't push back. You won't leave. You won't surprise them. And what can't surprise can't lead. If you feel hollow, if your voice lands soft like a feather instead of sharp like steel, this is why. Not because they're cruel, but because you've taught them your attention comes free. No cost, no value. This moment matters. You're still here, still reading, which means something inside you isn't dead. It's just buried under years of being nice. That ache in your gut? It's not weakness, it's strategic pain, the kind that reveals. Let it burn away the parts of you that settled for tolerance over respect. Are you ready to become the man people pause for, the one they can't predict or ignore? If this hits, write in the comments. I will no longer be easy to ignore. Subscribe not because I said so, but because you're stepping into a version of yourself that shows up to be felt, not just seen. Next, we dive into the emotional trap that turned your honesty into weakness. Part 2. The emotional exposure. Why sharing too much costs you power. They didn't need to break you. They didn't raise their voice. They didn't demand anything because you gave it freely. Not money, not time, but something more precious, your emotional access. You answered too fast, shared too early, revealed too much before they earned your trust. Each time, you taught the world a silent rule. Your soul is open to all. You called it vulnerability, being real. But was it? Or was it honesty mistaken for exposure? Machiavelli would have warned you, power comes not from what you reveal, but from what you withhold. A prince should be slow to believe and slow to reveal. Not out of fear, but because he knew human nature. The more access people have to your truth without earning it, the less they value it. They skim your stories like headlines, flip through your pain like gossip, reduce your wounds to ammunition. When was the last time you shared something raw and it was protected? Or did it become leverage, used when it hurt most? You thought sharing would build closeness, but it made you easier to label, categorize, discard. The brutal paradox: the more you tried to connect, the faster they pulled away. Not because you weren't deep, but because you gave that depth freely. In a world hooked on emotional convenience, what's free is forgotten. What's unguarded is unvalued. You're left wondering, why don't they ask how I feel? Why don't they protect what I share? Why do they listen but never hear? Simple. You never made them earn it. What isn't earned isn't cherished. Machiavelli wouldn't tell you to be cold, but to be strategic. Never reveal more than you control. Never explain more than they deserve. Power doesn't beg to be understood. It chooses who gets in. So rebuild. Not by shutting down, but by being precise. Speak less to be heard more. Explain less to stay in control. Let people wonder. Let them question. Let them earn their way in. Stop handing out your soul like a free sample. You're not cheap. In a world of emotional beggars, being expensive is power. If this stings, drop in the comments. My emotions are no longer on sale. If you're done being emotionally cheap, subscribe to reclaim control. Next, we tackle why your fear of boundaries keeps you exposed. Part 3. The fear of boundaries. Why you're being consumed. You've been told your whole life, be kind, be understanding, be easy to be around. So when someone crosses a line, you give them another chance. When they push, you move your boundary back, just a little. Not because you're weak, but because you're afraid. Afraid of seeming rude, afraid of being called cold, afraid of being difficult. You smile when you want to leave. Say it's okay when it's not. Swallow your truth to avoid making others uncomfortable. But here's the truth. Every yes to what breaks you is a no to what could rebuild you. Machiavelli warned, a prince who can't establish order will be devoured by his own people. Your people, partner, co-workers, friends, family, may not be malicious, but they respond to what you allow. And you've taught them your space is flexible, your limits negotiable, your presence free. They didn't cross your line by accident. They crossed it because you drew it in sand. When boundaries aren't enforced, they're invisible. Somewhere along the way, you equated being liked with being safe. But you weren't safe. You were convenient. You kept the peace but waged war on yourself. Played the good man while a quiet scream grew inside. And still, you apologized for having needs, negotiated your worth like a favor. Machiavelli would have been blunt. If people don't fear losing access to you, they won't value being near you. When was the last time someone had to earn your presence? When did you let silence be the consequence? Not an argument, not a guilt trip, just distance. A man with no limits isn't generous, he's exposed. Your softness isn't a virtue without a sword, it's bait. This world doesn't need more men afraid to offend. It needs men who protect themselves from being consumed. Men who walk like fortresses, not to push others away, but to guard what took years to build. Your time matters. Your peace matters. Your presence should never be assumed. If this lands like a punch, write in the comments. My boundaries are not up for negotiation. This isn't about being cold, it's about being clear. Next, we confront the reflex that's shrinking you. Apologizing for existing. Part 4. The apology reflex. Why you're sorry for being you. You don't say it aloud, but your life whispers it. In how you lower your voice when you speak. In how you tag "just my opinion" to your thoughts, like they need a disclaimer. In how you shrink before anyone asks. I'm sorry I took up space. I'm sorry I have needs. I'm sorry I'm here. You call it humility, politeness, keeping things smooth. But it's not. It's learned invisibility. Somewhere you were taught that to be accepted, you must be small. To keep the peace, you must stay out of the way. Now you don't just apologize for mistakes, you apologize for boundaries, standards, for existing too boldly. Machiavelli would have warned you, you can't govern others' hearts, but you can control how they approach you. That starts with, every time you over-explain, soften your tone, or smile through tension, you train the world to see your presence as a problem to manage, not a standard to respect. You thought transparency built connection, but without control, it's emotional nudity. No one protects what they consumed too quickly. You hoped understanding would earn love, but people don't love what's easy. They love what challenges them to rise. Every unowed apology was a betrayal of the man you're becoming. You asked permission to exist instead of declaring your place, made your identity a group project, softened your truth to spare weak egos. But Machiavelli didn't write for the agreeable. He wrote for those who rule themselves first. Power doesn't ask or beg. It is. What does that look like? Walking into a room without flinching. Being so anchored in your worth that others orbit you, not because you demanded it, but because you demanded it of yourself. When was the last time your silence made others speak carefully? When did you walk away without apology, leave them rethinking? You're not here to be palatable, you're to be powerful. If this cuts deep, drop in the comments. I'm done apologizing for being me. Now let's break the trap that feels smart but weakens weak you. You, explaining yourself into submission. Naraz, Part 5. The logic trap. Why explaining weakens you, you were taught. If you believed, if you explain clearly enough, they'll respect you'll stop hurting you. So you clarify, soften, write long texts, speak gently. Not because you're unsure, but because you hope they'll get it. Finally get it. But Machiavelli would have been brutal. Not everyone misunderstands by accident. Some understand perfectly and still choose to cross your line. Your explanations aren't clarity, they're leverage. Every justified no becomes a maybe. Every explained silence turns to hesitation. Every defended limit sounds negotiable. You justify to those who've shown they don't respect you, and what changes? Nothing. Logic doesn't fix betrayal. It makes it easier to swallow. You don't win by convincing others to stop. You win by removing their chance to hurt you. Machiavelli. Men are simple, deceived by those who wish it. People don't believe what's true. They believe what serves them. Your explanations don't change minds. They give leverage to those who find your clarity inconvenient. The cost? The more you explain, the more they expect it. Your authority dissolves. Your no sounds weak. The alternative? Let actions speak. Let withdrawal say what words can't. Don't owe closure. Owe yourself distance. If they can predict you, they can manipulate you. If your response is final, they pause. That pause is control. Stop narrating your worth to those who don't deserve your voice. Who are you still explaining to, knowing they'll never listen? If this slaps, drop in the comments. No more explanations, only action. Next, we face the weapon disguised as virtue, empathy. Namanah. Part 6. The tragedy of empathy. Why you give to those who drain you. You were taught to be good, forgiving, empathetic. So you gave second chances to those who didn't deserve the first, silence to those needing consequences, time and energy to those who gave nothing back. You called it love, compassion, what good men do. Machiavelli would call it self-destruction. Empathy without boundaries isn't virtue, it's an open wound. You believed loving harder would earn respect. But some don't want love, they want access. Access to your softness, your silence, your endless giving. How many times did you stay quiet? Not because they deserved mercy, but because you feared being called cold. You thought understanding made you noble, but understanding disrespect makes you complicit. Machiavelli. Men are ungrateful, fickle, false. Not to hate them, but to arm yourself. Unchecked empathy is blood in the water. Every silence to keep the peace gives permission to cross you again. They'll call it a misunderstanding, your sensitivity, but they knew. And you stayed, waiting for kindness to be rewarded. It wasn't love, it was control. Stop giving where there's no return. Stop bleeding for those without bandages. Empathy isn't a superpower, it's a leash if unguarded. Be selective. Not everyone deserves your care. Who do you keep trying to heal when they only reopen your wounds? If this wakes something, drop in the comments. My empathy now has a gate. Next, we break your hidden addiction, explaining yourself. Part 7. The hidden addiction. Why you can't stop explaining it, start small. A quick clarification, a soft, just to be clear. But it becomes a reflex, a habit, an addiction. You can't say no without padding it. Can't set a boundary without a backstory. Can't walk away without a 3-paragraph essay. You call it communication, respect. Machiavelli would call it fear. Fear of being misunderstood, selfish, cold. You believe if they understood your heart, they'd stop hurting it. But some don't want understanding, they want leverage. Your need to be understood keeps you small. Who benefits from your explanations? Those who keep access to your time, energy, loyalty, just because you keep them comfortable. Every explained no sounds hesitant. Every narrated silence sounds weak. That's how you lose power, not in one betrayal, but in 1,000 justifications. If you always need to be understood, you'll always be controlled. The predictable is cheap. Stop explaining. Become unreadable. Let silence be your sentence. Distance your boundary. No, your answer. When you stop justifying, people adjust. They pause. That's power. What would life look like if silence carried your message, if your peace needed no footnote? If this hits, drop in the comments. My silence is now my answer. Now we step into your new reality, leading without apology. Part 8. What happens when you stop explaining and start leading? When you stop explaining, you change. You walk heavier, stiller, like a man who doesn't ask for room, but is the room. You speak only when it counts, and your silence roars louder than pleas. You don't hope for acceptance, you know your absence will be felt. They adjust, not because you demanded it, but because your energy carries weight. Your boundaries echo. Your silence costs something. You're no longer begging to be included, you set the perimeter. Your withdrawal leaves a vacuum, and that's where power lives. People don't respect what's always there. They respect what they earn, what can vanish. You're earnable now, not by games, but by clarity. Clear about your voice, your value, who to get access. You don't lead with noise, you lead with gravity. Power isn't controlling others, it's refusing to be controlled. Are you waiting to be chosen, or have you choosing yourself? This world doesn't need apologists, it needs men who rule with clarity, discipline, and the weight of losing their presence. If this journey woke something dark, drop in the comments. I lead without needing to be liked. The most dangerous man is not the loudest. He's loudest. He's the one you can't read. He's you now, with nothing to prove and everything to protect.